Good evening, everyone, and I will call our regular meeting of the Board of Directors for this Tuesday, April 14th, 2026 to order. Thank you to those attending our meeting in person, joining us over Zoom, and those staying informed by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the back of the room on the table. Comments will, and turn the form in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the end of the table on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. Before we get to tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Horn Frazier, Eastham Williams. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Finch, Lingo, and Board Secretary Coven. And the first item on our agenda is a motion to approve said agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to our student representative updates, and first up will be the Tate High video.
Hi, this is Taylor.
And Anaya from Tate Media Production Team. It's been a good start to the third trimester.
We have been finishing up cap and gown ordering, senior surveys, and more in preparation for graduation.
Several students have worked on display at the Hancher Youth Art Show on display in Smith Lobby. There were different types of works, including painting, multimedia art, and ink pen art.
We have had multiple career presentations and opportunities in the last month, including Iowa City Rehab and Healthcare, a medical examiner, a wastewater treatment plant field trip, and more.
Students have been volunteering at the free lunch program, Houses into Homes, Maine Elementary, and Iowa City Downtown, and Basters.
We are looking forward to the warmer weather and the rest of the school year. Toodles!
Okay, great. Next up, we will hear from City High Representatives Alma and Tabaya. City High.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alma.
And my name is Toe.
It's been an awesome month at City High. We're excited to tell you about 2 state championships, mock trial and jazz band. Our mock trial program got to compete in the Iowa Supreme Court for the finals, and we ended up winning and making it to nationals, which we will be returning to in Des Moines. Lily Retanen also won the state championship for courtroom journalist competition.
City High Jazz Ensemble placed first in Class 4A last Tuesday at the Jazz Championships. And all of the City High Jazz Band celebrated on Saturday at our annual Jazz Showcase. It was a super fun night, as always.
The Children of Corn Robotics team, which are students composed from across Iowa City, has qualified for the World Championships and was recognized with the Gracious Professionalism for Award for Exceptional Sportsmanship.
Journalism students will be attending a conference in Minnesota to learn the results of the Pacemaker nomination, and our Model UN Club also recently attended their conference, where I, Toe, won an outstanding position paper.
Coming up, we have the Fort Coleman track and field relays this Thursday, which I believe that Waleed will also be running. And this is one of the premier track teams because they have Rachel Hack, who just broke the school record for shot put. Also, the dates shown for Frozen musical are coming up. Come see it April 23rd to the 26th on our newly improved Opstad Auditorium.
I'm pretty sure Eddie did this as well, so this is pretty cool. But, AP Capstone is thriving. For AP Research, oral defense, the presentations and oral defense questions were conducted, which ends up going to College Board for AP credit. So that was pretty awesome to see. And additionally, the music, or actually that's not my part. You got it.
Finally, Student Senate has worked hard planning prom, which will be May 2nd at the Graduate. Individually, Toe and I have been trying to make sure we fulfill our campaign promises, so prom tickets will be $20 instead of $25 this year, and we completed our day at School of the Wild. I thank you so much for the ICCSD Foundation for providing the funding for this experience. We got to hold turtles and birds and learn about conservation in Iowa. Everyone I talked to really enjoyed this, and we're really happy that we got to have this opportunity.
Lastly, I just want to say AP Seminar, the class before AP Research, had 57 shorter presentations, which is definitely really impressive. It shows that AP is definitely growing within our school. I mean, I have to say, being a Little Hawk is almost as good as being a Trojan. I hope I can get there one day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Alma and Toe.
Of course.
Next up, we will have West High, Waleed, and Eddie.
What's up, guys? I'm Waleed, and this is my friend Addie, and we're your West Student High representatives. So first, we're going to start with sports. So to start us off, I want to take a moment to highlight some things we can all be proud of. The incredible accomplishments of our football team, obviously. I mean, what is West without football? So this isn't just about wins and scores. It's about the hard work and dedication and spirit they've brought to our school community. So obviously, we won against City 30-0. Hempstead 56-7. The school record performance for Ethan Headings. Ethan Headings #1 in touchdowns and receiving yards in 5A. 2 juniors in the top 5 passing yards per completion, Mikey Moody and Reese Wheeler. Campbell Janis, 2nd in 5A with rushing yards. Adam.
Let me put you guys on the right tab. There we go.
All right. Okay. Iowa City West track shuttle is currently #1 in the state and ended up running number 5 all time in Iowa. Boys varsity soccer has won against Liberty 2-0. Girls varsity soccer beat Roosevelt 2-3 and CR Jefferson 9-0. Varsity tennis is undefeated. 1 meet, other 2 got rained out. They are #2 in the state. Our sports, track and soccer especially, have had many cancellations and postponements, yet they have handled it very well, preparing for big competitions.
Okay. Student government campaigns are coming up. Elections is set to take place in late April. ISASPs are lasting for 2 or 3 days. We have a great testing environment here at West High. Iowa City West had 2 teams break at the Gold Tournament of Champions with an octo finalist, Eddie and Faisan. And Economics Challenge took us to Ames, and Ethan Lee, Adam Salem, Venny Kotev, Alex Forbes won state, making it to nationals.
Thank you guys for everything you do. We appreciate it and acknowledge it. So, happy April Fools.
West High, best high!
Thank you, Waleed and Eddie. Next up, we will hear from Liberty High, John and Mia.
What's up, guys? It's me, John, from Liberty. Unfortunately, Mia cannot be here because, I don't know, she's scared of tornadoes or something. All right. We are finally back from spring break, and I am very excited to share everything awesome about Liberty. I'm sorry, there appears to be a mistake with my script. It says the best school. I certainly did not write that. It is a school. This week at Liberty, students are completing their ISASP testing. Many juniors for their last time ever. As a senior, it's been very gratifying to skip school during that time. This Saturday is prom and party after prom. Additionally, our school's game of Senior Assassin has been on a roar. Every year, seniors battle with water guns, fighting to be the last one standing, eliminating each other, competing for a fat cash prize. Mrs. Baxter, an amazing math teacher at Liberty, received the Shine Award this year. She has helped many students at the school and coordinates Liberty's math team. And really, what is there to say about Mrs. Baxter at Liberty? She has taught me so much math over the years. Extracurriculars. Tomorrow night, our National Honor Society chapter's induction ceremony will welcome new leaders to our group. These inductees will soon represent Liberty at the school board meetings in the coming school year. Liberty also had members of their robotics team on the Children of the Corn robotics team that qualified for world championships, or the world tournament. Next Saturday, Liberty's math team will be going to the GPML state math competition hosted by West High. And at the recent state speech competition, 14 Liberty teams received a Division I ranking, and 4 of them were nominated for the All-State Festival in Speech. So, very successful year for Liberty at speech. In terms of the performing arts, we performed the Shrek musical. The Shrek musical to audiences this past weekend and Friday. This beautiful story about a tragic ogre hero figure was brought to life by Liberty's own Technical Theater and Pit Orchestra. This coming Monday, many of Liberty's musical students will be presenting in the Solo and Ensemble Festival. Groups of 1 up to many students on a wide variety of instruments or using their voices will get the chance to show off their talent. Okay, I don't know if you noticed, but I am not John. This was envisioned by Alma, who is very unfortunately not here, as an April Fool's prank, and then we realized that the meeting would be way after April Fool's, but it still seemed worth doing. I hope you all got a kick out of it, and still got the updates that you would have gotten had we not decided to do this. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Please get home safely. As you can hear, it's doing a lot out there. All right, next up, we will have the ICEA update from Brady Shutt, the president.
Hi, guys, that's unprecedented, cooperation between the 3 high schools. I think it brought the storm upon us, to be honest. So, thank you, President Malone, Vice President Abraham, Director, Superintendent Degner, Secretary Colvin. I'm Brady Shutt, President of the Iowa City Education Association. I want to start with a reminder for our families that this week, as they mentioned, we are conducting ISASP testing in our schools. I think, as all of us know, the school performance profiles are not only reflective of our academic performance levels, but also of our completion rates for our students. So this week, we will administer around 35,000 exams to over 10,000 students. It's a monumental undertaking, and we at ICEA appreciate the work that our staff all across the district do to make this a success, and we ask for help from our families to make sure that their child is in attendance and ready to go this week. And as a longtime AP government teacher, there are also some shout outs to AP. I know that AP testing is soon and fast approaching. During the first 2 weeks of May, we will administer almost 3,000 AP exams across dozens of different subjects. And not to put pressure on anyone this year, but it's worth noting that last year we had 1,759 different students take 3,066 AP exams, with 83% of our students earning a score of 3 or higher in at least one of those exams. So to my colleagues and friends in the high schools, good luck as you enter the review periods. It is an intense period and you do tremendous work. And please remember, as I always try to do at this time of the year, that the success that we have with our high school students is a direct reflection and result of the amazing work and teaching by our colleagues in our elementary schools and our middle schools. So thank you also goes to Laura Ebinger. She also got a shout out with School of the Wild and her team at the foundation. Very well deserved. I had the pleasure of serving on one of the many teams that looked at the Big Idea grant applications. It's a tremendous program that the foundation puts on. Laura and her team and our community partners truly are a foundation for our success, and the Big Idea grants are certainly a testament to the importance of that work. On behalf of ICEA, I also want to extend our welcome to Pat Moore, who, of course, pending board approval, will be serving as our district's next Chief Financial Officer. Pat's experience, commitment to transparency, and expertise are needed and will serve our district now and moving forward. So welcome to Pat. And my last thing, I had a chance recently to go out to some elementary schools to do Carline. And if you've never done Carline, it's quite an experience. I find it a really good way to stay connected with why we are here as educators. And I'm a longtime high school teacher You know, as I mentioned, as some of you, if you have high school children or know a high school teacher, sometimes those high schoolers don't tell you as much. They're not very vocal about what's going on. But that's not true with the little ones. I mean, they pop out of the car, they got their big old backpack on, and they just start telling you their story of that day. And it's pretty amazing. And they always remind me of the opportunity that we have, the responsibility we have to help each of those students grow and learn and dream big dreams. And I want to end tonight just by thanking all of our employees and all parts of our district for the important role they play in that success and in that growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak about. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comments directed at non-agenda items and agenda items will take place at the beginning of the meeting and will be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speakers who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on the iPad on the ledge in front of Board Secretary Ms. Colvin. An alarm will sound once the speaker's time has expired. The initial community comment period will be limited to 1 hour. Remaining comment, to the extent necessary, will take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And our first speaker of tonight will be John Fogarty.
Evening. My name is John Fogarty, 708 Whiting Avenue in Iowa City. I'm a West High grad. I've got a kid at Shimmick. As a reminder, I serve as board president for an organization in the corridor doing tens of millions of dollars of business. As board president, I had to oversee the dismissal of our chief executive and the hiring of a new chief executive. And we also use policy governance like you do here. All of what I'm going to share is based on my personal experience. First off, I want to say I'm really excited that agenda item J1 is on your work for this evening. I hope that if it's not an executive session tonight, that you will examine that topic in executive session with your counsel and without management present. That is going to be key to this board addressing the very important decisions it needs to make in terms of our chief executive of the district. Excuse me. Before you get to making that change, which I want to remind everybody is very necessary based on what I said a couple weeks ago. If anybody thinks we're not in a serious crisis, that's disturbing. This is the situation facing the district is very serious. And as I said a couple weeks ago, we passed the point of needing to change superintendents a long time ago. Before you get to making that decision, immediately you need to start looking at an organizational audit. Something I did in my own process going through all this work that you have ahead of you. The organizational audit needs to examine all levels of administration. Some of the topics this audit needs to be looking for include misuse and theft of resources, inappropriate relationships, and most importantly, toxic people in the organization. Toxic people in administration are a cancer to the organization and will cause us to lose good people. Oftentimes, those toxic people are involved in the other points I mentioned that you will be looking for in this audit. I had consultants available to me and other resources to other organizations that could conduct this audit. I don't know what might be available to you as a board. It may come down to a committee of past board members, community members. Would love talking more about that. In fact, I'm going to talk to my consultants and see if they can work with a board of school board like they do with nonprofits and such. In any case, you need to start this audit. Not only is it beneficial in the long term, but it also gives your new superintendent a work plan of sorts to immediately improving the administration of the district. And to that point, the administration budget needs to be shrunk by at least $1 million. Payroll, that is, needs to be shrunk by at least $1 million before you go on to touch custodians, food service workers, counselors, and teachers. These are the folks that have the direct impact on our children every day. I work with retailers all across the country in my day job. Cutting those teachers, counselors, custodians, food service workers is akin to cutting the number of folks you have on the retail floor. We should be striving to be at least a Target or a Costco and not a dollar store. So as this crisis
Thank you.
don't cut your frontline staff.
Next up, we will have Matt Hyatt.
Good evening. My name is Matt Hayek. I am a former mayor of Iowa City and an attorney, and I have kids in the system. I have served on nonprofit boards, on for-profit boards, and on elected bodies. The district's financial crisis is now very public, and two things are clear. It is the worst crisis in our 170-year history, and it was self-inflicted, caused by serious mismanagement. When I spoke to you last in February, I stressed the importance of the board having independent legal counsel to guide it. I described my experience on the city council and how the direct and constant legal advice my colleagues and I received kept us out of trouble. I said that the school board should have an attorney providing advice directly to all 7 of you. 2 months later, from my vantage point, you still lack adequate guidance. Your attorneys in Des Moines infrequently attend board meetings and generally do not participate by speakerphone or Zoom. This puts them and you at a disadvantage. If they do not hear the presentations and if they do not hear the discussions and the community input, they cannot guide your deliberations and decision-making. I don't know if they are fully aware of the widespread and growing public anger. All of this tells me that you as a board lack the protection and the guidance that you need at this critical moment. Compounding this is a board policy, number 207, that prohibits individual directors from contacting the board's legal counsel without a majority vote, and that requires all legal communication to go through the board president. Such gatekeeping is inefficient, it is undemocratic, and I believe it is part of why you are in this situation. The board's attorneys appear to be communicating as much with the admin team as they are with the board, even when it is apparent that your interests may not be aligned. As I said in February, the buck stops with you. You have a fiduciary duty to ensure legal compliance, provide financial oversight, and hire a qualified admin team. There are legal consequences if you don't. If I were a board member in the midst of an organizational crisis, I would insist on direct and constant legal guidance as a condition of my continued service. Your board policy allows a majority of you to request that your attorneys participate in all meetings. The financial and management issues are intertwined with legal considerations. Given the risk you face as board members, I do not understand why you are not seeking more protection and guidance. It is dangerous, and I hope for your own sake and for the good of the public that you will change this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Janet Godwin.
All right, good evening. Janet Godwin, 2532 Aaron Drive Southeast, Scott Township, former school board president. I've been watching since January the unfolding of the financial crisis here in the district. I know you are acutely aware that this is a crippling situation. We can rail as much as we want about the stunningly bad policy decisions from the state, but in this case, sadly, we have no one to blame but ourselves. So what brings me here tonight? To share feedback from scores of community members who literally stop me, call me, text me, wanting to talk about what the heck is happening in the school district. So I'm not here to stir the pot. I'm here to openly share feedback and then to suggest some things the school board can do to get in front of what is becoming a bigger and bigger snowball. So first, the themes. Number one, dumbfounded outrage. How is it even possible that we haven't had a month-end close since June 2023, or that we just saw the 2023 financial audit in September of 2025? Where's the accountability for those systemic failures? The 2023 audit included in the compliance section a finding of a material weakness in producing timely financial reports. That is a bright red alarm that there is something deeply amiss in our financial processes, and the board knew about that September 9th, 2025. Where's the accountability? The second theme is overwhelming sadness, because we have lost a beacon of immense pride in our community. We love our school district and we see it weakened. Number three, fear. Folks that work inside the district are afraid of losing their jobs or having to do their jobs in more difficult circumstances. There is fear about the nature of the upcoming draconian cuts, and the most profound fear is that the choices we make to address the financial crisis will end up hurting our most vulnerable students the most. Number four, break in trust. There is almost no trust in the district's ability to get us out of this situation. A common remark I hear is, how can we trust the people who got us into this to get us out of this? And because of these statements, I'm also hearing actions our residents are contemplating. Parents are considering sending their kids to private school. They're considering open enrolling into other districts. They're considering no longer donating to our school district foundation. Folks inside the district are looking to retire early or leave the district. So what can we do? What do I suggest? I think first, we need to put credit where it is to the work of the interim CFO, who is helping you get a baseline of what has been occurring the last 3 years. That's the number one priority, is to understand the facts, to inform choices going forward. I also applaud you on the hire of your new CFO. Second, I think there needs to be a fulsome communication campaign from the board, talking to residents about what happened and the actions you're taking to make sure this doesn't happen again. Right now, many residents are getting their information from media. That is not good enough. And with the lack of direct communication from the board, we have nothing but speculation abounding in the district right now. So the board needs to get in front of the communications, to be honest with residents, and to start rebuilding trust. Third, given the size and scope of the upcoming cost-cutting measures, bring in external objective experts to help you model the cost-cutting scenarios and fully understand the impacts to our students, families, and staff. I know you have financial advisors, but you will also need experts to help you rethink and redesign org structures, not just tweak around the edges. Given the size and impact of the cost savings, you cannot afford to get this wrong, and you will need help. Fourth, act with a sense of urgency. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment, and the board needs to be driving this change. And finally, I appeal to you, be brave. You were elected to lead. It means having the awareness to ask for help. It means having the courage to stand up and own the damage that occurred under your watch and to be the champion and driver of the needed repairs. It also means making the hard choices necessary to right this ship and rebuild trust in this community. I am not being alarmist.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that you all do your
Next
work.
up, we will have Sarah Iverson Murphy.
Hi, my name is Sarah Alderson Murphy. I teach at Jefferson High School. I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. I'm the parent of 3 Iowa City Schools students, and you've heard me speak before about how much happier I am as a teacher now that phones are banned bell to bell at my school in Cedar Rapids, so that kids get to talk to each other instead of just disappearing into their phones. I want that for my kids in Iowa City too. But I'm here today to talk about something else also, freeing our kids from the Chromebooks. My middle schooler, like many kids, when he has too much screen time, his behavior changes. He gets grouchy, irritable, begging to do screens, so we leave the Chromebook at school. It doesn't help. We realize that the entire friend group is spending their whole lunch, their study hall, and every passing time, plus any free time they can talk a teacher into giving them, just wasting time on their Chromebooks at school. I managed to get onto Securely to actually see the history, and it's not easy. You have to email multiple people. It took about 2 weeks. It was complicated to get access to see your kid's info. I was really concerned to see that at school, my child was routinely spending between 1 and 2 hours a day of time on video games on the Chromebook, or on YouTube watching videos of other people playing video games. This again is at school, during school hours on the school-issued device. So then we came to discover that, to our surprise, on Securely, parents are unable to block sites on our own children's computers while they are at school. So let me repeat that. During school hours, the school district settings override any blocking that parents choose to do on Securely. So if I want to block a video game site, it doesn't matter. My kids can still play all the video games they want at school until the district blocks that site. And new sites pop up every single day, so a concerned parent can do nothing. After meeting with administrators from the middle school, we reached a solution. My kid is now on Chromebook lockdown at school, which unfortunately makes him feel like some kind of preteen cyber criminal. He gets it specially delivered to the class only when the teacher requests it. Okay, fine, he can deal with the embarrassment. My question, why has our culture just assumed as a default that we have to give our kids access to brain rot? Kids are spending their school day glued to junk screens, not developing social skills or imaginative play because they're bored in between classes, or even just running in circles in the playground because they don't do playgrounds in middle school. They're literally not allowed to go outside during lunch or study hall, but they are allowed to spend 100% of lunch and study hall and passing time on computers. So our tax dollars are giving them computers and YouTube instead of books, pencils, paper, play. Okay, I'm just gonna tell you one more story, this one from my experience as a teacher. About a year ago now, as we all are now aware, Google added AI overviews. This means that even though ChatGPT is blocked on school Chromebooks, every student with a Chromebook now has a chatbot, feeding them easy, no-thought answers during class without them even leaving Google. Online research, I teach English. Online research is a joke. Any kind of online test, credit recovery, Edgenuity, it's a joke. I recently caught 12th graders completing their CPR test required to graduate high school by copy-pasting the entire question, ABCD answers, into Google. Google then tells you the correct answer is B. I'm telling you, we're at the point where Chromebooks have become unusable paperweights in my class. The cheating is so incredibly easy for students. I have to teach everything on paper and pencil to get anything done. We've come full circle. We thought we had to get Chromebooks so our children wouldn't fall behind. At this point, I truly believe we have to get rid of them entirely before they completely destroy our children's integrity, their attention spans, and their critical thinking skills. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Ashton Barrett.
Hi, my name is Ashton Barrett, and I have 2 kids at Twain. First, I would like to ask district leadership to please consider the recommendations for additional screen time survey questions shared with you on behalf of a group of parents, educators, and mental health professionals earlier today. But here's what I really came to share this evening. My family moved to Iowa City last summer, and I was worried that the transition to a new school would be difficult for my kids, who are shy and intimidated with new people and experiences. However, their transition to Twain went more smoothly than I could have dared to hope. It was so seamless because as a small neighborhood school, Twain has been able to meet my children's most fundamental needs, these needs that we know are foundational for kids to learn deeply. These needs including safety. My kids feel safe and supported at school, and research has shown that smaller schools increase safety by fostering student and staff relationships and accountability. Belonging. When I drop my kids off at Twain, they are greeted by staff members at the door personally by name. My kids know the names of all the staff and students in the entire school. That special feeling of knowing each other and being known contributes to a strong sense of community and belonging. Relationships. My kids' small class sizes have facilitated deeper relationships and trust with their teachers. A shout out to Mrs. Pritchard, my second grader's teachers who's had lunch with her multiple times and even cheered her on at one of her soccer games. A shout out to Mrs. Bodorf, who supported my kindergartner in making friends after she spent the first week of recess sitting alone under a bench. And a shout out to our principal, Mrs. Kirkman, whose responsiveness, accessibility, and positive interactions with students models effective relationship building for the entire school. At the last work session, Suzanne Gerlach of PFM Financial Advisors said that in this time of budget crisis, we need to talk about what is essential. What I just shared is essential. Our neighborhood schools are essential. They set the foundation for our kids to be nurtured in safe, tight-knit, small pond learning communities before launching into the big ocean of middle school. Gerlach also said that the district's technology expenses have snowballed from $1.5 million to $3.5 million. The Gazette reported that $10 million spent on new computers contributed to the current financial shortfall. One-to-one Chromebooks, digital playgrounds, and gyms that cost $21,000 each. These are not essential. In fact, they are hindering kids' learning and well-being, and schools across the country are responding by rolling back their one-to-one policies. Let's join them and consider cutting tech before closing schools. Education Week has reported that students who attend a school that closes during their K-12 career have lower test scores along with worse attendance and behavior in the short term. In the long term, they're less likely than their peers to complete college and have a job. And research has shown closures disproportionately affect students of color and students from low-income families. Whatever path leadership decides to take to get the district's financials back on track, I urge you to center our most vulnerable students in your decision-making process. I have the privilege to be here tonight because I don't have to be at work. My spouse is at home caring for my 3 kids. I drove my car here, and English is my native language, so I can readily understand what's been happening in the district. Many of our students' families do not have this privilege. And so I feel called to ask leadership to ensure your process seeks out the voices of these families and students before you make more budget cuts. Learn what is most essential from those whose lives will be most impacted by these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Emily Campbell.
Good evening. My name is Emily Campbell. I have 2 children in the district, and I've worked in financial planning and budgeting for over 20 years. At the March 27th legislative session, Representative Jacoby asked how the district's budget crisis is impacting capital projects and whether it would affect the district's $14 million contribution towards a swimming pool in Coralville. Superintendent Degner responded that the district is working on a pathway to fund this project and has been in ongoing discussions with Coralville about this partnership. I want to be very clear. There should be no conversations with anyone about creative funding pathways for any capital projects right now. The district needs to stop and reassess its entire capital plan with the help of financial experts. Continuing to have conversations that suggest that we will find a way to fund specific projects risks further eroding trust with the community. On April 1st, your financial advisors, PFM, told you you need to borrow more funds to continue to make payroll. Capital projects are overspent and require loans from the general fund for cash flow. Substantial budget cuts will continue to be needed over the coming years, and only $1.5 million per year is available for capital needs over each of the next 2 years, which is barely enough for basic maintenance like fixing air conditioning. The Facilities Master Plan 2.3, approved last May, outlined spending $114 million on projects. A few highlights of what the plan includes are basic infrastructure projects like site utilities at schools, upgrades to track and field facilities on site at all 3 high schools, updates to auditoriums and fine art spaces within each of the 3 high schools, investments in playgrounds and outdoor learning spaces at elementary schools across the district, and the most expensive project, $14 million towards a pool in Coralville. I'm not here to tell you which of these projects to prioritize. I am here to tell you that before having conversations about creative ways to fund any individual project, you need to pause everything, Work with your financial advisor to figure out what funding will be available. Reassess all projects in their entirety using your own guiding principles, which are ensuring equity and inclusion, growing early learners, increasing student opportunity through school design, and supporting the whole child. From there, create a clear public framework for prioritizing projects that defines how decisions will be made. For example, how does this project support our priorities and our guiding principles? How many students will benefit? How often will the space be used? What are we giving up to fund this? The process must involve the entire board, it must be transparent to the public, and every project must have a clear, realistic funding plan, not one based on magical thinking about future enrollment or additional bonds passing. Remember, we don't have a bond rating and we won't be able to apply for one for 2 more years. When FMP 2.3 was approved, there was no clear explanation or plan for how it would be funded, and financial advisors were kept in the dark. We're now seeing the consequences of that. The district owes the public, our legislative partners, and the city of Coralville honesty and transparency about where things stand. Until you have a clear picture of your financial outlook, you should not be engaged in discussions about funding any single project. You should be focusing on what is essential, what is affordable, and what best serves our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Bethany, is it NICU?
Hi, my name is Bethany Nishu. I live on the east side of Iowa City. I have 3 kids at Mann, and I also recently started working as a para at Shimmick. I really like my job. I'm here as a parent, not as para. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for doing your job. I've been following these meetings for well over a year, and I just appreciate your willingness to show up twice a month, sit there, try to make impossible decisions in front of unhappy people, and a live audience. It sounds like a nightmare to me. I don't understand why anyone would run for school board, but thank you. I am commenting for the first time. To be honest, I kind of stopped writing emails because I would spend a lot of time writing them. I'm a very slow writer, and then I wouldn't hear back from the majority of y'all. And when that happens, I just wonder, are people hearing it? And to be clear, I'm not expecting like long bespoke emails, just, received, thank you would be great. I don't know if you're aware of this Facebook group called ICCSD Chat, but they put out a survey about the district's financial situation recently and received about 1,500 responses. They said they were going to send you the results. I'm assuming that means they emailed them to you, and like I said, I don't know that email is a reliable form of communication, so I'm just going to share them now. I will say I didn't design the survey, I didn't administer it, I didn't compile it. The data, in fact, I found some flaws. I don't even know who runs the ICCSD chat group, but I'm inclined to believe the results because they're in line with conversations I've been having with other parents and educators in the district. For the people behind me, as I'm going through this, if you agree with the answers and want to raise your hand, feel free. A note, I consolidated the results a little bit further in the interest of time, and anyone can go on this Facebook page and see more. So question number 1 in the survey was, how concerned are you about the financial state of the district? 85% said very concerned. Question 2, do you think there should be accountability in district leadership for the financial situation facing the ICCSD? Personal note, I would have loved a working definition of accountability or some sort of more concrete language about expectations. But yes, 95% of people said they think there should be accountability in district leadership. Question 3, if you said yes to number 2, who should be held accountable? And you could select as many as you wanted to. Overwhelmingly, the positions on the leadership team were the ones who people wanted to be held accountable. The top 3 answers were the superintendent, 90%, the former CFO, 85%, and the deputy superintendent, 80%. Question 4, where do you think budget cuts should be made? Select all that apply. And again, the top 3, central administration got 95%, sell property like the Tyler building, 80%, and year-round administration not assigned to school buildings got over 75%. Again, this isn't the entirety of the results, but hopefully it gives you a clear picture of what community members would like to see happen. And again, thank you. I know you have a difficult job. You're not going to be able to please everyone, but I hope you'll take this information from your constituents into careful consideration. Thanks again.
Thank you. Next up, we will have Angie Rogers.
Good evening. My name is Angie Rogers, and I live in Coralville. I'm here tonight to talk about the financial crisis facing our district, and specifically the board financial leadership update attached to tonight's agenda. This financial leadership update is not a leadership document. It reads as an attempt to manage optics rather than confront reality. It avoids the central issue. The district is in a financial crisis, and there still is no indication from this board whether anyone from the district will be held accountable. Where in this update do you tell the public that the district is relying on a $25 million warrant just to manage cash flow, that another $10 million in borrowing is likely needed next year to fund payroll, that cash balances have dropped to levels that barely cover payroll at certain points, that the district lost its Moody's rating back in October 2024, and the earliest the rating will be restored will be in 2028. SAVE is fully leveraged through 2038, that the tax rates for the ICCSD community will likely be going up to bail the district out for its mismanagement of taxpayer funds. Those are not minor details. This is the reality. Instead, your update highlights meetings with attorneys, communication with auditors that won't complete audits until 2027, requests for board training, plans to form committees. None of this addresses the urgency of what is happening right now. The public deserves direct answers to very basic questions. Who is accountable for the failure to maintain basic financial controls? How did the district operate for years without timely audits, reconciliations, and accurate reporting? Who was responsible for filing the district's federal tax returns, specifically Forms 941 and 720? 7 returns were filed late, resulting in more than $525,000 in late penalties. The most recent penalty was assessed on February 9th, 2026. How did this continue to happen? What specific steps are now in place to assure this doesn't happen again? How was an unqualified CFO hired, and who approved that decision? The prior CFO was a direct report to the deputy superintendent. How did that oversight fail so completely? Why are basic financial safeguards only now being implemented? Why is there no immediate plan to reduce administrative costs at the executive cabinet level before impacting classrooms? And perhaps most importantly, what consequences will there be for individuals responsible for creating this financial crisis? Your updates offers no answers. Board Policy 701.5 outlines your fiduciary responsibility to understand and clearly communicate the district's financial position. Your update does not come close to meeting that standard. The community deserves clear answers, real accountability, and decisive leadership immediately. Do not be a rubber stamp for administration. Do the job you were elected to do and provide governance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we will have David Norpier.
I would really like you guys to do the right thing so I don't have to come here anymore. I am a hysterical white person. I am hysterical about wasted taxpayer money. I am hysterical about increased class sizes, about ongoing behavioral issues that are getting worse in our classrooms, about low test scores, about very low morale amongst our teachers, and about a complete loss in trust in this man right here and some of these people right here. That makes me hysterical. March 27th, legislative meeting, beginning about minute 16. At minute 16:58, a board member says, "The groups I am associated with are not raising great concerns about our financial situation." That is a violation of the Code of Ethics that requires board members to represent all children and families equally, not just the groups that they are associated with. The board member continues. Our leadership has materially affected their safety, mumble, 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 and success rates of our students of color. Safety, violent incidents have increased. Are you, as board members, aware of the statistics? You have to be. Success. We have grades going up because teachers tell me we have grade inflation to make people feel better about themselves. Is that going to help them get a job? Our test scores have been stagnant or falling for years. You guys need to look at the test scores. They're available to everybody. 14 of our schools, over half of them, score below state averages in science, math, and English in 2025. Below average. Iowa is already below average. 20 of our schools fall below in at least one area. 20 of our schools. Only 7 schools are above in all tested subjects. And here's the whopper. 1 school is above average in all subjects and also above average in student growth in English and math. 1 school. That is a failure, Mr. Degner. However, with grade inflation, let's give it a D so that everybody feels better about themselves. Absolutely ridiculous. So, board member continues. The tone of criticism has gone beyond what is called for by facts. Do you know the facts? And way beyond what is comfortable for parents of minority households. Mr. Jacoby, the tone of criticism from who? Board member, from the people who are doing the criticism. Mr. Jacoby, who is that? Board member, that is all whites. Violation of state code, grounds for dismissal from the board, in my opinion, blatantly racist. Black eye to the district, black eye to public education in Iowa. Mr. Degner, you've lost our trust. You're hurting our district, you've hurt our children. It's time to resign. You're making a lot of money. That's sweet. Please stop hurting us.
Next up, we will have Katie Linder.
Hi there, my name is Katie Linder. I'm a parent here in Iowa City. I've got 2 kiddos that go to school here. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get through this entire article, but I think this was posted by Joe Yonker in a Substack. It's called What the District Bought and What It Cost. And I think the timeline, just staring it in our face, is very helpful as people start to get educated about what's been going on. So I'm going to read as much of it as I can, and I encourage people to check it out online if you haven't yet. So this says, between 2022 and 2025, the Iowa City Community School District has spent or committed approximately $116 million in restricted capital funds on property acquisitions, facility construction, and a junior achievement partnership. During the same period, district administrators borrowed $10 million from the Employee Health Insurance Fund without authorization, failed to perform month-end accounting closures, misdirected $7.4 million in debt service payments, and allowed the district's Moody's credit rating to lapse due to late audits. What it didn't do was call their financial advisor. So here's the timeline that I think is helpful. September 12, 2017, voters approved $191.5 million bond referendum to fund the facilities master's plan. At that point, our Moody's rating was intact and very high. In April of 22, the board approved the facilities master plan 2.0 to fund with Save and Pepple funds. This includes the Tyler building, which we're in right now. In June 14 of 22, the Tyler building is purchased for $8.75 million. At the time, the building was assessed at about $5.36 million. In July 5th of that year, the building is later rebranded the Center for Innovation, which is where we are now. It's home to the online school and a $2.1 million junior achievement program. February 28th of 24, 19 acres on Rort Road is purchased for $607,000. Using SAVE funds, there's no development plan for it until the 2029-30 school year. District enrollment is already declining. In April of 25, the Junior Achievement Dream Accelerator Partnership is approved. Estimated cost at $2.1 million in PEPAL and SAVE funds. Board members note that Superintendent Degner sits on the Junior Achievement Board. At the time, Board Member Finch says we have to decide what's needed and what's want. In public school districts, there's only a finite amount of funds. Mitch Lingo said a $2 million pilot program. That is just a bit questionable at best. That feels very rich considering all we've been talking about lately. Spring of 25. $104.6 million 5-year facility plan is approved. The administration claims that we have $114.7 million in remaining SAVE capacity to fund this plan. We know from the financial advisors that came from that last session that they offered their help to help with that financial plan. A call never came. Flash forward to March of 25, administration moves into the Center for Innovation. Dodge Street building is vacated. There's still no public plan for what we're doing with that building. August of 25, this is when we all start to kind of wake up to what's going on. 10 million borrows from the health insurance fund without board approval. The board will not learn of this transfer until January 26, about 5 months later. September 23rd of 2025, $536,000 in the Dream Accelerator construction bids are awarded. Construction proceeds while the unauthorized $10 million interfund loan still sits undisclosed to this board. November of 25, our CFO, Adam Kurth, departs. January of 26, the board learns of the $10 million interfund loan 5 months after the fact. January of 26, the Dream Accelerator ribbon cutting happens. The ceremony occurs 2 weeks after the board first learns of the unauthorized $10 million loan. February of 26, the district discloses books unreconciled, no financial statements available. Our Moody rating is gone, has been gone. March of 26, $7.4 million in misdirected debt service funds disclosed. A $3 million warrant is issued. April of 26, without borrowing, the general fund will close fiscal year with 7 days of cash flow. $25 million tax anticipation warrant is recommended.
Next up, we will have Mark Crooks.
Hello, I'm Mark Crooks. I live at 610 Clark Street in Iowa City. I, like a lot of people, became aware of the financial difficulties probably in the last few months. I think there needs to be an external audit. I have no trust in the school district, at least with from a financial perspective. I contacted the school board. I got 3 responses. One of them laid everything out. I didn't quite understand it. It kind of sounded like there might be a state audit, maybe, if it went a certain direction. And from my point of view, I want a state audit, period. I don't want it to be, maybe we'll have one. So I contacted the state auditor. They said a board member could ask for a state audit, which no one has done from what they said yesterday. At the auditor's office, or state auditor's office. They also had said you as a resident can petition, get 100 signatures, and petition for a state audit. So I am doing that. Anyone wants to sign my petition? I have it here to have the state audit. And I guess I'm just stunned at how out of control this is. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Mary Coughlin Julian.
Good evening, everybody. I'll start while I'm walking up. Go ahead and start my call. I'll be brief. No, I won't.
We call it a merry minute at Alexander. I talk and talk and talk. So some of you already know that. Appreciate you listening. I was up here a few weeks ago, I don't know, whatever. And I made some comments. I'd like to revisit a couple of those and then offer some other things. First of all, and first and foremost, thank you for doing the job that you do, the board members. It's not an easy job. As somebody said earlier, most people wouldn't want it. You ran for it, I assume you want it. Good, great. Happy you're here, happy you're doing what you're doing. Mr. Degner, I've worked for you for a few years now. I appreciate your time and everything you've offered as support for the school in which I work. I just realized I didn't introduce myself and why I'm here. Apologize. My name is Mary, you knew that. But I'm an employee of the district. I am a community member here in Iowa City and have been for over 20 years now. Most importantly, to me, I am a parent of 2 students, one of whom is graduating this year. The other one graduated last year from City High. Incredible art department. Keep up the good work there. Wonderful, wonderful things. I wanted to offer the statement from one of the previous school board members. The last statement that she wanted to make was, we are in the worst crisis that we've had in the district. I don't think that is bold enough, but I think it's clear enough. Our optics are bad. Our Moody rating, until this evening, I didn't know what that was. I probably would have thought about social emotional health. Moody. Our people are moody, okay? Obviously. We've been told over regularly as parents, as employees, etc., that we don't have the money for X, Y, or Z. We don't have the money for additional social emotional support, i.e. adequate counseling staff in schools. And by adequate, I mean ratio-wise to student staff. And now we know why, in part. And that is not a catty response. It is a, this is how we're feeling response. Having said that, I now risk, and what other people have said to me, is, Mary, don't say anything because you're going to incur repercussions. I know this to be better. I know better than this because I do have trust in your ability to do your job. The choice is yours whether you're going to do it or not. When I was up last, I said, you have an opportunity. We all know the system is broken. The system is broken well beyond the financial piece. The system is broken at its core, in part because we are built on a racist situation, and I'm not quite sure what the hysterical white man in the back was going for. I'd like to clarify. Well, we can do that later, because I'm not sure which direction he was headed, and that's fine. But I do know that we can do better, and I've heard a lot of things saying we need to really take care of our families and staff, or families with students who have not the best resources. You have the best resource in those people. They know how to survive on Jack. Ask them how to balance a budget. Ask them what our priorities should be. Ask them. Grace has been extended. Now we need to talk about accountability. What are you willing to do to make it right? If you have made mistakes, own them. I always say to my kids, if you mess up, fess up.
Thank you. Next, we will have Heidi Hassan.
Hi, I'm Heidi. I'm an educator in this district, and I've been here for 10 years. I really debated whether or not to say anything tonight because there is quite a concern among staff about speaking out about the budget. I hear about it everywhere from every school and every educator that I've talked to. We are consistently told in schools that we don't have money for certain things. I am watching classroom teachers, as well as everybody else, constantly buying supplies out of their pockets, doing everything in their power to help our students, bending over backwards. And it's well known that educators work 60, 80-hour weeks. I'm a school counselor, And we are consistently told that we don't have enough money in the district for more social emotional support. We are supposed to be around 250 students to one counselor, and we don't have any schools that are at that ratio. We have a lot of concerns, and that's really just if we're talking about well-off schools. As Iowa, we're one of the lowest ratings for mental health in the entire nation. I also work with mobile crisis outside of here, and so I see firsthand the need that we have in our community, and I also see firsthand the need that our students have. Our families rely heavily on our schools, especially our schools that have families that don't have access to a lot of resources, and our staff are bending over backwards trying to meet those needs. We have a lot of concerns right now about how this budget is going to impact our ability to serve our students, especially our most vulnerable students. I think there's been a lot of things that we've heard floating around about cuts to our health insurance or cuts in staffing and having that just be a natural attrition of people who are retiring. This has happened in the past, and school counselors got spread out thin in that moment, and we were able to meet the needs of our students as well. Luckily, we were able to get more school counselors after that. But it feels really frustrating and disheartening as a person who is working very hard every day, not just me, but everybody that I talk to have this happen in our district, and to feel that betrayal of trust as a staff member as well. So I know that there's been a lot of people talking about concerns about retaliation, but the biggest thing that we're concerned about is our most vulnerable students and making sure that this is not impacting the services that we offer them. And I've heard a lot that it's not going to, but I don't see how that's possible if we're cutting staff who are in the buildings serving the kids. There's been things where we're making sure that our paraeducators are clocking out right on time. That's really difficult to do when oftentimes they're waiting for buses with our most vulnerable students. And so it feels like we're making sure that our staff, who make some of the lowest amount of money in our district, are the ones who are checking those boxes. It feels really concerning as a staff member. So I just want to put out there that we at the buildings didn't get us into this mess. And we don't want it to be coming back on us and the services that we're offering students, as well as our benefits. Because when things like our health insurance are cut or changed for out of pocket, it's like a pay cut. So we have a lot of staff who are concerned. And I just want to share that our main focus, everybody I work with in this district is an amazing educator who's on the ground. We care so deeply about our kids. We want to be there for them, but we are already stretched super thin, and this keeps having a ripple effect. What's happening at the district office to everybody in the buildings, and that affects our students, and it affects staff morale. And we need that support to be able to keep doing our job effectively. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is the end of community comment. Before we move on to consent agenda, were there any questions or comments from directors who reviewed the bills this cycle? Hearing none, is there any items from the consent agenda that directors would like to pull?
Would like to pull item number 15, resolution to set the date of the April 28th, 2026 at 6 p.m. for a public hearing on the conveyance of interest in real property. I think it's supposed to be real estate property. Real property locally known as 1725 North Dodge Street.
Okay. Are there any other items? Is there a motion to approve minus item 15?
So move.
Seconded.
Right. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
What's the motion?
To pull number 15.
Oh, okay.
Approve consent agenda with poll number item 15.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with directors Abraham, Finch, Horn, Frazier, Lingo, Malone, and Williams voting yea, and Director Easton voting nay.
Thank you. Director Lingo, item number 15.
I've come across some questions on the amount of money that we are, it says in the proposal, convey interest above described property from this to the city of Iowa City for $3,248,773. I was wondering if we could get some information how that figure was come up with.
Yeah, so Director Lingo, there's an appraisal on the property done in 2023 that appraised the property value at $2.97 million. In our negotiations with the city, they recommended that we take that appraisal price and add the percent growth that the commercial property rates in the area have seen, which was in the neighborhood of 9%, and that's how we arrived at that 3.2 number that you're referencing.
Thank you.
Were there any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? Oh, did you have, okay. Is there a motion to approve item 15?
I motion to approve. Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
And my computer is still trying to move that item down, so I'm just going to do a roll call vote if that works. Horn Fraser.
Yes.
Eastham.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Malone.
Yes.
Abraham. Finch.
Yes.
Sorry, Lingo.
Yes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is committee reports, the Financial Oversight Committee. Director Lingo.
We had a lot going on tonight. First, one of the big things we focused on was 200.3 G4, the Financial Oversight Committee Charter. First, a thank you to Emily Campbell for doing a lot of the legwork on this. And with an example of a charter and sending us some examples of other school districts. She's here. I thought she disappeared, so thank you. Some of the discussion points were change in the draft language, articulating the board and community, or change in some of the language to help the community and the board itself better understand the financial condition of the district. The draft version would bring in people. The idea of the draft version is to bring out people from outside. That have backgrounds in finance, accounting, and business, because sometimes there's just not enough people here that know it. And to bring in outside community members, an example version that we had was 6 meetings per year. Several board members suggested having the meetings more than that for right now. Potential ideas for adding members with specific qualifications such as CPAs, finance, people with experience in audits. There were some questions on wondering if we can get enough people with those backgrounds. People like the idea of committee members being free of relationships to the district. There's the idea of potential chair or rotating chair for the committee. Some discussions surrounding the number of community members, and the draft language it had 9. Seems a little bit high to some on the committee. Possibly 7 or 5, something a little smaller and a little more wieldy. Need to build in language still in the draft for people that either leave the committee or are not attending it, and then find a way to include reporting responsibilities and putting it on the agenda. And then we moved on to 208.R1, which is board committee regulations. We decided that we don't really necessarily want to change that policy in particular, but do some of the legwork through the policy that I just talked about. Board financial leadership update, some of the questions about making dashboards and information more publicly available, specifically the ones like policy 303.2 or other policies that kind of have that metric of what is the district's financial condition, so people can take a look at it and see what it is compared to what we have established as our priorities. And then we moved on to the 700 series, and I will point out that we will be tabling that when it comes up to a vote later tonight because we want some more time to work on it. This discussion of internal controls policy, some kind of mechanism to monitor controls, goes back to the dashboard idea. Reference in here for there is some discussion in there for calling out fraud, where there'll be protection for those people that call it out within the district if they witness any sort of financial fraud. Capital projects and planning of potential revisions to make sure that bond counsel is worked with or contacted before we actually engage in capital projects. Then kind of going back to the dashboard, some additions discussed on adding language of enhancing policies. Then there were some questions on everything needing pre-approval on the P card. So one of the examples that's brought in is the students over from City High that got stuck in Chicago over spring break. Someone needs to help them get fed, or at least we hope so. So, you know, having to have the band directors or chaperones go through a P card approval process while students are sitting there hungry may be a little bit unwieldy. And as I said earlier, these 700 series will be tabled at this time for a future meeting later. I think that's it. Any other comments?
I have one note that is about something we didn't have a chance to touch on with relation to with the 700s. This is just a note for information. Under 712.1, Business Continuity, Security, and Resilience Planning, the new policy, I'm really happy to see this, and it mentions that midway through the first page, business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan, incident response plan. I just want to make a note here that there are some resources available at the state level to conduct some resilience exercises through Iowa State University and their cybersecurity center there. And I just wanted to, I'm not sure who to talk to about that, but I have, and it's a FEMA funded program. And so the district could access that easily if it would be helpful. So,
Great. Any additional comments from board members? All right. Thank you. And policy review, as Director Lingo mentioned, we were planning on tabling that. Do we need to do a motion, or can we just?
There's an action item for the 700 policies, so we could do a motion
Okay.
to table at that point
Is there a motion to table?
when we get to the action.
Oh,
It's in action too.
I am so sorry.
No, you're good.
Policy review.
I don't have anything
Okay.
to review. It's been reviewed.
Great, thank you. Did other directors have anything? Thank you, my apologies. That takes us to the presentations tonight. And the first one up is the Iowa Code Section 279 with the focus on 279.23 and 279.24. And we have our attorney, Christy Latta, here that will lead that.
Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Christy Latta. I'm from the Allers Law Firm in Des Moines. Happy to be here tonight. First, you know, you're all used to hearing from me in a more private setting, right? You know, to preserve our attorney-client confidentiality and, you know, whatever the topic it is that we might be discussing. So this is a little bit different, and I want to make sure that we set that understanding at the outset that there's some limits to what we'll be discussing here tonight. This is really going to be a general overview to provide the board with some education on 279 administrator contracts, and I think help inform your further discussion as it relates to options in that regard. All right, so 279, Iowa Code Chapter 279. It is a monster chapter in the Iowa Code. It applies in a lot of different ways. It applies to teacher contracts. What we're talking about here tonight is administrator contracts, so there are some differences as it relates to the protections there. But what 279 essentially requires for administrators is that each administrator in a school district who is given an employment contract has to have certain things in the contract. And there are certain provisions, and we make sure that those are all included. There's also then mechanisms for governing their operation and enforcement. And from a very basic standard of employment where you might have an at-will employee who could be terminated at any time, you know, for no reason whatsoever. You've also got that contrasted with the legal entitlement that perhaps a contract, or in this case a statute as well, gives you. And so from a 279 administrator contract, there does need to be a reason to bring that contract to an end. So if the district's wanting to look at, you know, ending, modifying, what have you, with regard to administrator contracts, there's certain processes that have to be followed. There's what I look at is three basic ways for a contract to either be stopped or modified. The first one, of course, is the administrator can make that change. They can submit a resignation, they can decide that, hey, you know what, I'm not gonna continue on for the next school year. So that happens really around this time quite frequently. You know, the spring is a very popular time for people to make a change as they're looking at next year. The code actually requires that administrators give notice of resignation by May 1st or the date for return of the contract. So, you know, this is always a time when there's a lot of shuffle and movement amongst districts and folks within their districts. The second way is to have a mutual modification. So a mutual modification would be something where the administrator and the district would agree, like any other two people that are parties to a contract, could agree to say, hey, we're going to modify a contract and we're going to replace what we have now with this new one. We're either going to, you know, change the term, we're going to change some of the other, you know, provisions in the contract, whatever it is that the parties agree upon, but they have that power to mutually amend the agreement so that you've got a new form of contract for going forward. And then the third is termination by the district, right? So first you've got the administrator who would have the ability to terminate. You'd have the second mutual agreement between the parties, and then third is the district's ability to either terminate or modify administrator contracts. The reason that that becomes important is that by definition, 279 contracts are continuing. So just like our teacher contracts roll over from year to year, administrator contracts will roll over from year to year unless one of those three options is exercised. Either the administrator stops the contract, the administrator and the district agree to do something different, or the district stops the contract. When it comes to the district stopping the contract, there are certain procedures that the code outlines for things to be followed. And oftentimes, a district might stop a contract in order to say, hey, we want to stop what's currently here, but we're going to replace it with something else. And so that comes up a lot with RIFs, a reduction in force. So you might say, okay, you know what, we don't have the ability to give a full-time administrator contract to, you know, John Smith, but we would give a 0.8 FTE contract to John Smith. But because of the continuing nature of the contract, we might want to terminate the first one and then replace it with the second one. So termination doesn't always mean termination, you're done, you're no longer employed. It can also mean some sort of change or modification to the contract that maybe isn't being agreed upon in an amendment or a mutual way. So when you stop that continuing contract, then you either have the option of replacing it with something different or just stopping it altogether. And that, you know, happens from time to time as well, in addition to things like the reduction in force and replacement and all of that. The statutory process for doing that is there's a deadline that's May 15th that's in the code. That's something that every district is aware of come this time. It's a little different than it is for teachers. For teachers, it's April 30th. And so there's certain things that have to happen by that date in order to initiate the process for termination. Again, whether or not termination means ending contracts or ending employment, replacing with a different contract, whatever. So when you're considering what your options are, right, you know, it behooves you to think about either the timeline and what the mechanism is for how you want to accomplish your goals. I would think about, right, kind of putting this into two different buckets. So if you're looking at making changes, again, in a general overall sense, you want to think about what is the purpose for the change? What's modifying, you know, the contract? Is it going to be motivated, right, by an individual issue, right? Are we looking at modifying someone's individual contract from a termination standpoint or a modification standpoint? If we're doing something based on an individual, then you would probably need to talk about that in a closed session, right? So you'd want to talk about a closed session, you'd want to get that on the agenda. That's not something you can just do, you know, sua sponte, right, you know, at the board table. A closed session has to be posted on the agenda like any other discussion item would be. And then you have to make sure you've met the parameters for the closed session. So if you want to have that personnel conversation, the parameters for the closed session are that the subject employee is requesting the closed session. The subject employee doesn't have to necessarily attend. It's just that they, you know, would have the opportunity to at least request the closed session. And oftentimes, people do attend the closed session and there's some conversation and discussion in advance of making a decision. The other bucket, right, so that kind of individual personnel-driven side, the other bucket is more like what I would say is like a bargaining situation, more like collective bargaining. That's an exempt session. That's different from a closed session in that you don't need the request of anyone in particular because you're not talking about anyone in particular, you're talking about positions. So closed sessions, I think, are reserved for, hey, we want to talk about people and their performance. And an exempt session is we want to talk about positions of the district and what we're doing for terms and conditions associated with those positions. So, you know, again, the best analogy I can think of is a teacher negotiating session where you're talking about a collective group of teachers. And so you might be thinking, you know, okay, with our administrators collectively, is there some sort of change we want to make to the terms and conditions of employment as a group, as a collective? Then an exempt session would be appropriate. And again, you wouldn't need the request for any individual because there wouldn't be a performance aspect to it. It would be different. And the reason I encourage one of those buckets to be chosen, or at least to have some consensus, you know, where your motivation is in making modifications and or terminations, is that allows you to get into that appropriate session, right? Either get into that closed session and have the conversation, or get into that exempt session and have the conversation that's appropriate, because that will be I think the venue, right, by which you're able to actually have a full and frank conversation about what it is you want to do, and then you can come back out into that open session and act from there. So are there specific questions that you would like me to, to address tonight? Specific as general can be, I guess, right? You know, because we're not looking at any confidential conversations or attorney-client advice. That's not appropriate time for this, but if there's any clarification on the statutory framework, feel free to let me know.
Go ahead, directors.
I feel like we're missing a step here, or it's sort of like there's some sort of magic that's supposed to happen that I'm not quite latching onto. But how do we get a consensus of the board if we can't talk about it at the board table? How does an individual understand to request a closed session if the board can't come to a consensus?
I think you can come to a consensus at the board table as far as, do we want to put closed sessions on the agenda? Do we want to put exempt sessions on the agenda? And then knowing what those closed sessions are, you can direct your board president to then say, okay, we know that this person is going to be the affected person. We would like to collect that request for a closed session. But it has to be posted on the agenda, 24 hours in advance, just like all of your discussion items have to be. And so typically the way that would work is, with the board's role being one of governance, typically the way it would work is you would have either your board president or someone that you're directing in the administration to approach the subject employee and say, hey, we're going to have a closed session as it relates to your performance. It's going to be on the agenda. Would you like to request that to actually occur in closed? If not, it'll be in an open session, because under that closed session 21.5 provision, it has to be something that is requested by the employee.
So is that something that we can have a vote on tonight? Can we have an action item to propose that we go to closed session?
You wouldn't be able to go into closed session tonight.
Right.
Right.
I know.
Yes. Okay, you're saying to put it on the agenda.
Exactly.
I mean, I think, I don't know that you've got really an action item for it, but I think you've got at least enough of a discussion on the agenda where it would make sense to say, hey, we want to plan for this next time. Just like you put anything on the agenda for the next time, I think you could talk with Ruthina and Matt. I think they're the ones that cultivate your agenda, if I'm correct. I mean, I think it could be that, hey, there's a consensus at the board table that would be a good idea, and put it on. I don't know that it even requires a formal vote. It might just be, have we reached, at an agreement where we feel like this would be an appropriate next step.
So is this something that would be appropriate to bring up at agenda setting at the end of the meeting then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Any additional questions from directors?
No one has any other questions about this item? Do you?
I will say right now, without having any sort of, anything submitted to me beforehand, it makes it incredibly difficult for me to govern from the board table. I know presentation. I just have the law and I have no understanding of it. So that's my lack of question. It's not a lack of caring. It's a lack of understanding of what would even be presented to me tonight.
So with termination of a contract, if there's, say, we're in the first 6 months of a 4-year contract that ends and we don't have to pay out the rest of the time remaining, or would you?
So the provisions of 279, the legal framework for our employment contracts, are one thing, and then whatever it is that you all as a board have already promised people is an additional thing. And so, to your point, it's very difficult to advise without knowing what the specific nature of the conversation is that we're happening. Are we terminating? Are we modifying? Are we looking at amendments to contracts as it relates to pay, amendments as it relates to terms? I think there are specific provisions in different specific contracts, and those would need to be reviewed, which is why I think it will help if we're able to come to some consensus on what is our bucket. Are we doing a personnel individualized review and conversation? Are we doing a collective administrative restructuring, position analysis? Those will dictate the mode of legal advice that follows, and it wouldn't be an appropriate forum anyway at this point to have a conversation about attorney-client advice when I'm advising the board. You wouldn't want that to be in public. There would be a number of reasons why that would not be ideal.
Are you able tonight to kind of give us an idea of what the threshold would be, or what those buckets would be that we could go into closed session with counsel? When would that be appropriate or allowed?
Anytime you're already in a closed session, I can be there, right? So it's the board's party, as I like to say, and you can invite who you want when it's a closed or exempt session. So if you're in a closed session squarely to discuss a personnel issue, if you're in an exempt session squarely to discuss administrator terms and conditions, those are things that I can be a part of, and we can have those conversations. There's not really an independent exception in the closed session open meetings section of the closed session section of the open meetings law that relates to attorney-client conversations. There is one, but it's to discuss strategy and matters that relate to litigation. And, you know, I don't know that that fits here.
So if we are going to have a conversation tonight in agenda setting about a closed versus an exempt session, and we're going to discuss having closed sessions about specific employees, can we specifically name those employees of who we want to have a closed session about from the table tonight?
I think you can accomplish that in a way that doesn't require that. I think you can say we want to have a closed session to discuss personnel, and then whoever it is that is maybe, you know, indicating that they want to do that, I would probably recommend relaying that information to Ruthina to relay to the person so that they can request the closed session. I mean, you know, I just think in the interest of, you know, keeping personnel information confidential, that would make the most sense.
But we need a board majority to go to closed session, correct? Do we need like a consensus, or can one person call the closed session?
I think you would do it however you do your normal agenda setting items.
Okay.
Excuse me, on that point, does it take a board majority to actually make a closed session? I thought that was a requirement of the state law.
It is when you vote for the closed session. I think she was just asking about putting it on the agenda, having the conversation to put it on the agenda. And when you vote for the closed session, then there's special requirements as it relates to that.
Okay, so we're just talking about creating an agenda.
It's actually, it's actually 2/3 rather than a majority or all of the members present at the meeting.
Okay, right.
When you say just for the people at home, moving to closed session is when the vote happens, is when we walk in that room and then we vote in that room to go to a closed session, and that's when it happens.
Right, and that would be when there's the 2/3 vote to articulate, right, hey, we're going into closed session for this, or all of the members present at the meeting, and it would, basically be behind closed doors. I think what the conversation is about tonight is whether or not to put that on the agenda as something that will be voted on.
So, and so we're waiting until agenda setting to have that. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments for Christy? All right, thank
All right,
you.
yep, thank you guys.
Next up is our cell phones and screen time presentation.
We wanted to follow up on this item before we reached our summer break because there was some discussion we had early in the year about switching some policies regarding personal devices, and also we had talked about screen time. And so a couple things here. One, I think we want to be sensitive, obviously, to the situation that's dominating a lot of our time and attention, or almost all of it right now, and to understand or get some feedback from you about if this is the right opportunity or time to ask people for feedback, or if we should not be doing that or should delay that. So I think that's an important element of the conversation. And then second, I would just say, even as we heard from some of the community commenters again tonight, I think we just have to keep challenging our system to continue to look for ways to move away from any screens for our kids when we're talking about either cell phones or the Chromebooks. I think we're seeing more and more research all the time, more data points, there was a meta-analysis about iReady that came out here in the last 2 weeks about limited impact. And so I think this is just going to be the next step that our system has to take as far as continuing to challenge to look for ways that we can uncouple kids from the screens and devices. And that's not easy in every circumstance, right? We know that would take some replacement opportunities and that we need to build those with our staff. But realistically, I think we all can look at that with a pretty similar view that that's going to be the next step in our process. So Lucas is going to walk you through a few reminders tonight about where we left this conversation, and then ask for some of your feedback in that regard, and then we'll identify some next steps.
Thanks, Superintendent Degner. As he had mentioned, we're going through these previous presentations has mainly been focused around the personal device policy. We're coupling that with a couple other electronic issues as well. So we've got really three objectives here for tonight. Some rationale for the feedback that we're asking based upon the survey that was also attached for this evening, both to staff as well as families. A review of the timeline that we would anticipate should any action occur following tonight. And then review, hopefully offer an opportunity if you had a chance to review the survey. I know we had a community commenter tonight talk about additional questions for screen time. We did not see those, so certainly open to your feedback if there's additional questions without making that survey too cumbersome with these three topics. What would be the best point in moving forward? So you've seen this a couple of different times. The most recent was when Brady and I presented over a potential timeline. The conversation that evening did not focus on any action, but it was mainly a discussion around the board table. So we've talked about, and kind of the importance of tonight is the ability to inform, educate, and implement, which we saw success with last January when we implemented a new secondary personal device policy. So we're going to go through kind of the three different topics here with personal device. So again, we talked about in previous presentations about the continual decline of infractions that go along with cell phones within the secondary buildings. We've also, again, the most recent discussion occurred in January, had a chance to review the discussion that occurred at the board table by directors a couple different times, trying to get some common themes or similarities as far as what you wanted to see. And you see some of that reflected within the survey questions for this evening as well. And then again, what we would like to do is seek feedback from our staff, not only our secondary teachers, administrators, support staff that have been implementing this new policy since last January, but also offering opportunities for our elementary staff as well. Obviously, the elementary current policy exists within the handbooks. There's nothing formal written as policy, similar to the secondary. So again, we want to offer opportunities for all of our staff to provide feedback, both on an existing policy as well as anything new. These next couple items occurred through the budget reduction plan that we had presented over the course of the last few months. So again, part of that reduction that if you remember back, was looking at limiting or eliminating some of the software that we have within not only our teacher use, but also what our students use as well. So this gave us an opportunity to reflect on some redundancy, some things that maybe have the same type of outcome, but they are maybe has some minor nuances that are a little bit different. Offer an opportunity to what is that impact that those software programs have on student learning. And then get system efficiency as well. If you took a look at the survey questions in particular, one of the things that were highlighted in the elementary survey was two particular programs, Happy Numbers as well as Lexia. Those are significant costs, but it's also significant things that are used in the classroom, both for enrichment as well as interventions for our teachers. So that question really reflects on if we eliminate those two set items, which are, again, two large budget items, I think just under $250,000 when looking at the two of those. What is the impact that that would have on a teacher in their classroom should those two programs be eliminated? That doesn't mean there aren't maybe other things that exist at either a cheaper cost or maybe no cost at all. But as we start to think through that, what is the impact that that has on teachers within their ability to instruct within their classroom? And again, that question from the staff in elementaries reflects the changes that they would need to make. Obviously, screen time has been a large conversation just over the last couple of years in particular, really highlighted this fall and over the winter. So again, we want to make sure that one of the budget items was also looking at the elimination of potential devices at certain grade levels. So again, we know that that has potential for large scale change, and that just can't happen over the course of a couple of days or a couple of weeks. So making sure we provide appropriate, adequate time for our staff, that if there are any changes to devices within the classroom, to make sure that the teachers who are reliant on some of those components to supplement some of their instruction, do they have the ability to modify or change those instructional needs? So we've got the ability to ask those questions within our staff. We also want to know from our teachers, what is that average amount of time that students are using the devices within their classroom? We want to make sure that we offer opportunities for feedback for those particular elementary and secondary. Obviously, elementary, when they're mainly with one or two teachers a day, that's a little bit different than the results we're going to see from our secondary. So that's why you see those questions worded a little bit differently. One of the questions or one of the comments that's come up repeatedly over the last few months is the organization of a committee to study not only the research of what is best in terms of what the research currently states as far as the amount of an appropriate time students should spend on their devices, but that committee could also be helped to be used to steer what that work looks like to help support teachers and students in that as well. So that would again be our work pushing forward here, is assembling a committee of both district staff, building staff, and community members to help support the need to study the appropriate use of screen time and the appropriate amount of screen time for our students. So again, you saw a timeline earlier that was reflective of when we implemented the new policy for secondary cell phones last January. This is truncated it's going to be very accelerated should we choose to start with that survey tomorrow. So again, we want to inform our staff before they leave for the summer if there's any changes, whether it be small scale changes or large scale changes, what those could potentially be. And the timelines you see here, it's not at all or none. If you guys choose to look at one thing over the others and maybe give some more time to some additional pieces, whether, again, not putting all three items together at the same time, this was what we would see as the appropriate timeline. So again, without any large scale changes to the survey, we would anticipate having the survey sent out tomorrow to our families and our staff, giving approximately 10 days for them to complete. That allow us and give us enough time at the beginning part of May, once we get all that survey, getting all that put in detailed as a format as we can to provide you the appropriate information if there's any further decisions to be made. Again, our goals before staff leaves is to inform and educate not only our staff, but our students and families of any potential changes so that can be implemented at the start of next school year. So, that was very quick through it. I would encourage you, if you have not, I think you will, I'm seeing many of you flip through it, looking at that survey draft. Obviously, we've got members of our team that have been working through this as well, that if I can't answer it, I will certainly count on them to help with it, so.
I think the email we got, and we should, I guess I thought you saw it too, that had additional questions. I think that it's worth looking at to see if you think that some of those ideas could be added to the survey. But anyway, so maybe we could send that to you, but I guess that would, change the timeline, like we couldn't do it tomorrow, but I think they're worth you looking at. I really appreciate your idea of putting together a committee of district staff and community members and teachers. I think that's a great idea to help us with this, because there's so much research coming out, and we need to figure out what are we going to you know, how do we help teachers figure out what to put in the place that will be more effective. So I appreciate that idea a lot.
Yeah, I agree with the Director Abrams' comments in regard to asking you to look at the suggested additional survey questions and areas. If that's to me, that would be appropriate. After reading the email and looking at the authorities that were cited by the writer and so forth, I think it's could be helpful. But again, I realize that interferes with the timeline you've outlined here, Lucas.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. I would strongly say, ask that you take a look at these questions that were sent to us from a constituent, and I can go ahead and forward them to you because I think they're very valuable. And the existing survey that you had, I did have a couple of specific questions about that survey. So I believe it was on the cell phone portion, question number 4, where, and by the way, thank you, Lucas, for your presentation. So sorry. I failed to say that. It was a question about if we think middle school should have the same policy as high school, but there was really no option to say, do you think middle school should have the same policy as elementary, which I think really is kind of the direction that we're kind of thinking about going. And then there was a question about, do you feel that your students in high school need more access? And I guess I was kind of confused about why that was a question, because I don't think there's any, I won't speak for anybody on the board, but it's my thought that there's no one on the board that is looking to go in that direction with our current cell phone policy. So I just had some questions about that.
Remind me that question, I'm sorry.
It was question number 5.
Thank you.
And and again, agree wholeheartedly on the committee. Yeah. Right. First question, yeah. And the second one was around question 5. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to echo the thank you for the work on this and the willingness to address it in time for next year. I know that there's a whole lot that could be done, and it's not feasible to expect massive change all at once. And so one of the ideas that I have been thinking about is that this could be a place potentially where the education committee can be helpful once you get the survey results, because like this calendar suggests it's a real tight turnaround time, and I feel like there are questions related to just screen time, questions related to tools, and I think maybe some discussion about what to use as sort of priorities, how to prioritize the changes so that families feel like their concerns are being heard and addressed, and teachers and staff also feel the same way. So maybe that's something we could talk about with a function the education committee could serve as a way to just process some of this in between the survey results and the recommendations.
So I would thank you for taking the time and giving us the presentation tonight. I would echo the same sentiment that if we can look at the additional questions that were sent to the board from a community member, I think there's some that would make the survey even more robust. And so I know this is a great timeline in hopes of getting something in place before next year, but I would prefer to see us get as much data collected in a robust manner versus trying to stick with a tight schedule to allow us to especially get as much information from our teachers and families. And to that point with families, this will go out in various languages that our families speak.
Yep.
But is there a way, because getting it in an email versus having someone say, hey, have you completed this? I don't know if there's like school activities coming up where we can be there to encourage families to complete the survey so that more people are involved in sharing their thoughts.
One of the things we can explore, though, as well as email, obviously we can look at those events that are occurring within the buildings to promote those, is looking at how our buildings use talking points. Obviously, emails could be, it's a great resource. It's a great source for us, but some may be checking that intermittently. Where talking points, that our families and our schools have a great communication between that already. So that's also an avenue that we can use to help push this out, a link to that survey.
Great, thank you.
And just to make sure that, I just want to make sure, I'll review those additional survey questions here tonight. So if there's, with the additional questions, we can get those uploaded as quick as possible, what the best format is for you. Once I get those added, do you want to see those before that goes out? Just kind of so we know kind of next steps from our end, so we can get that going.
Thank you.
No, I thought somebody was gonna.
I mean, you could email it to us.
Yep.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yep.
First, Lucas, thank you for taking this on. I'm just going to remind ourselves and acknowledge that what has been acknowledged earlier today, that PFM told us that technology costs is one of the reasons that we got in this place. And specifically financing through SAVE is one of the issues that led to this crisis. If we had voted no, and myself included, in the one-to-one last spring, as I originally walked in that room wanting to do, we would be much better off right now, and I'm sorry I voted for that. Then I would like to continue on to Director Finch's point, the questions surrounding elementary use of technology extended to the middle school parents. I have not met a single middle school teacher that has told me yet one-to-one has added anything to their classroom or the district. I have a nephew that tells me he's on his computer too much during the day. I usually don't mention him, but it's like I don't want it anymore. And the specifically going back to looking at opt-in policies for websites for the schools so that teachers say, hey, I want this website to be allowed instead of the whack-a-mole. Just everything's banned. If a teacher needs to use abcnews.com, it gets an on switch. If the teacher needs to use thegazette.com, gonna throw out for Grace over there, then there's an on switch clicked for that website. Instead of just doing the whack-a-mole of video games, because every parent in this room has kids of a little older age have told me that is one of the larger issues. Same with teachers. And then just on the survey itself, because we're doing two things at once, if one becomes, like if it starts to become a little unwieldy, maybe breaking out the cell phone questions into one survey and the screen time use questions into another, just so that so like if I open up a survey and there's 20 questions, it's like, nope, not today. But if I open up and it's broken into 10 and then 2 weeks later I get another survey and it's 10 more questions, I'm usually going to do that survey. So anyway, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
So with that, I mean, just to make sure that I got my clear direction, are we looking at two different surveys? Are we happy with one? I mean, there's pros and cons, obviously.
I think it could be one survey. I mean, I think they're sort of related. I mean, cell phone and screen time. So, well, I mean, I think they could go together. I don't know. I mean, I
almost wonder if there's a way we could introduce it in two parts, because I kind of was thinking what Director Lingo said, like if it's short and a little tighter framed, and if we're really probably have some more, although I would see, we also have some urgency on the data around some of the screen time things, but the cell phone one was the original urgency around the data. And so I wonder if we almost hit them in two phases with the survey, and we could break it up into two.
I'm not married to my idea either. It's just more if we start adding in questions, because
Yeah,
we
once it
gave
gets
Lucas,
too long,
we gave
right?
Lucas
Yeah.
direction to add more questions, but then if Lucas comes back to us with a 40-question survey,
Right.
from adding in questions, be like, yeah, so.
If you guys could be open to either, we can obviously work on it, and then share it with you
Yeah.
via email. verbally,
Open
yes.
with either.
And you may find from the community members' suggestions, that there are ways to combine. I mean, like, maybe it's not totally additive, is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
that's my hope.
Any additional comments or questions?
Thanks very much, Lucas, for bringing this to us.
All right, thank you. Next up is our discussion item from the Interim Chief Financial Officer report. CFO Michael Lee.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening, thank you. My report looks very long this week, so I'm gonna try to focus on some direct areas. Right now, an update on the reconciliation. We have gotten through May of 2025 for all the general fund areas. However, the other areas are still being worked on. We're kind of focused right now. We have the auditors out, and the staff is spending a great deal of time working with the auditors right now with their questions and follow-ups and so forth like that. So I kind of want to talk about the audit a little bit, how it's going, because right now we're doing the fiscal year 2024 with a new auditing firm. And I feel, and the staff is probably feeling the same way, the people that I've talked to as well too, the progress is going well with the new audit firm because the new audit firm is providing additional guidance and assistance to the staff, which I think is very vital and important that they weren't getting previously. For example, the auditors are working with the staff to help develop some audit schedules and documents, as there were none of these schedules or documentations in the file from the previous year, so therefore it made things very difficult to prepare some of these audit work papers. If you have the opening balances or the ending balances when you start the next year, if you need to trace something, that gives you the ability to be able to trace some of those things back. So right now, they're working with trying to get those structured, so as we move forward to 25 and 26 and forward, you're gonna have this foundation built. So I think that's a pretty good thing that the audit firm is working with the staff.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify one thing? Do you mean that the audit firm that we're currently working with is helping in ways that the previous firm did not? Or was it just that we didn't internally have some of those systems in place that maybe should have been there before this current audit firm started working with us?
I think it's both, but I think the new audit firm is being a little bit more proactive in assisting the staff. So I think they're going a little bit above where the services that you had from the prior audit, from what I can see.
Thank you.
So I kind of wanted to share that with you guys because that's kind of a process improvement, and we've been working on a lot of process improvements around here, and I think that's a really critical one because it's kind of building on the schedules and so forth that the staff has put together. So this is kind of really helping them focus in on some of the basically development of that. So that was my big thing that I wanted to really share with you guys. Then we also, my chart keeps getting updated weekly here. It probably doesn't look like a whole lot, but there's a lot being completed with the audit in the fiscal year 2024, in addition to the 2025 items as well too. So as soon as the 24 audit is complete, we can roll into the 25. In addition, the month-end closing, we can't do all the things that are on the schedule until we get everything caught up, but some things can be done, and some of the items have started, such as your quarterly 941 reconciliations. The first quarter ended the end of March of this year, so those returns are due in April. that first quarter has been reconciled and submitted on April 6th with the whole 941 plus the Schedule B and the report to the state. So that is done, submitted, timely. So we're making progress here. And it was reviewed by the controller as well as the payroll manager. So there's been 2 sets of eyes on that, and the controller did sign off for the report to be submitted. It's progress. In addition, the fixed asset system with the capitalization, I know that was a point in the previous fiscal year 23 audit that was mentioned there. That is being looked at, opening up that module in the current financial system instead of it being maintained on an Excel spreadsheet. So that's going to be opened up. So after we finish the 24 audit, then that can be opened up so the items can be loaded up there, so we have something that's more than just a manual system and has better securities and record retention. I'm going to stop there in case anybody has any questions.
Thank you again for your report and for all that you're doing for us. I have just a few questions, and I can't remember which, you got several PDFs uploaded here. I can't remember which one it was, but you said new templates needed for standardized journals to record property taxes when received so the appropriate counts and funds are credited. Are we opening up the separate accounts as recommended by Suzanne Gerlach in PFM?
That's not what I was talking about.
That's not what you're talking,
No,
okay,
no.
all right.
I'm talking about just fundamental internal processes.
Okay.
So things are recorded correctly, accurately, and similar every single month. So people aren't guessing at, where to record something. If we have a standardized template of where to record property taxes or anything, payroll, any like standardized journal entry that's done every month, we need to have a template that staff can use. If something tragic happens and we need to backfill the position, there's standardized reports that are there that they can use to put the numbers in, trying to make it a little bit easier and consistent. So
Okay.
we're not cleaning up a mess later.
This has nothing to do with like the Pebble levy?
No, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Well, can I ask that question though about the separate accounts that she referred to for SAVE? And I know you weren't at that meeting, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can't answer. I really
Okay,
can't.
that's fine.
Sorry.
That's fine. Do you have anything?
Yeah. Okay, there's really 2 important documents in here, and I thank you for bringing them up for the purpose of transparency. The first is the SBRC report, the School Budget Reconciliation Committee. This is tracking what we promised the state that we would do to protect our district financially. I treat this as a performance improvement plan, and we have listed things that we did not do, and these questions won't be for you, I'll let you know, but thank
Okay.
you for all your work. These include not completing bank reconciliation, depositing and posting receipts, updating testing account codes, fixed asset accounting, accrual entries, and SES requirements, which I don't know what that means, but I don't know what half these things mean because I'm not an accountant or CFO. But we pay for one. I will say that my accounting friends and people that are accounting adjacent tell me that had these things been done, our problems right now could be alleviated. The superintendent's name is on the document that was submitted to the state. And I know that in the hierarchy of the position that the deputy superintendent was over the CFO. So I have a question to the 2 of you. Who was monitoring the CFO to make sure these tasks got completed? Anybody? And why weren't they completed?
I think if we want to discuss performance-related tasks or responsibilities, we got some direction on how to best handle that tonight, Director Lingo.
Okay, then the second document is one about us not paying our taxes. As tax day is approaching tomorrow, there's some irony here. When I put in my code for in school district, it added $270 to my TurboTax. I will recognize the community that we are paying additional taxes to help the school district. I'm recognizing and I'm thanking you for that additional money for those in the audience. I will recognize that as well, a community member approached another board member and myself last winter to tell us that there was a tax lien put on the district. I alerted leadership and administration of the lien that we were told by the business, and we were told that by the business office that the lien was put on us in error. Meanwhile, we were never explicitly told by the administrative team about the other 4 times we received tax penalties. Did anyone else in the business office know about the lien and tell administrative team that this was not put on us in error?
Again, I don't feel comfortable talking about employees' performance in public. Director Lingo.
Okay. Given that the tax lien information that came with showed over $500,000, which is equivalent to 5 teachers, what is the likelihood of the federal government taking any appeal of them? I guess this would be a question for you.
I have something to add to that.
Yeah.
Because of the situation, and I knew it was coming to the board last week, when you received these reports, we did reach out to the IRS to ask them how to do an appeal process with them. They are forwarding us. We are waiting to get this in the mail. Since it was late last week when we contacted them, we're waiting to get the documents from them so we can do an appeal. Whether they tell us no or not, at least we'll make an appeal.
Okay, then this one is not, it's not a performance question, it is just why wasn't the board alerted to our other next missed tax payments?
There's at least one other time the board was alerted through a director inquiry of the
Yeah,
large.
I made that one, the one this past year.
It was one that Director Finchen made in, I believe it was early in the year in 2025. It was the large 390,000.
Please alert us in the future when we have our making.
If I know about them,
Okay,
I'll
thank
be
you.
sure to let you know. I would say from a process standpoint, they get pushed through in account payables, and so those aren't pushed through the superintendent's office to be reviewed or signed off on. There's no documentation I've seen or received for those, and so if we know about them, we would alert you of them. We've responded to questions previously, and those would have been the emails you guys have been privy to.
And I just want to add one more thing that we talked about in the financial oversight meeting this evening, is some additions to policies in the 700 series. So to the policy 701.5 fiscal management, I asked that we add language that indicates that the CFO financial data that's presented to the board needs to be reviewed and approved by the superintendent. That's one. And then a policy 707.1 that deals with the presentation and publication of financial information in the annual report. At the end of that, I have asked that we add, it is the responsibility of the superintendent to ensure the treasurer submits this report to the board annually.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Charlie.
I'd also like to ask you if you can answer a question like this. Or were the modalities or the models I think you were referring to earlier that you're creating now, which will help current staff and future staff members to do the necessary bookkeeping entries or accounting entries. Were those things in existence before fiscal year 2023? Were those things in existence available to staff before FY '23?
I think before '23, they did have a lot of manual records, so there is no records or those kind of forms or templates online. I think what they're using prior to that was a more manual task entry, so I don't know for sure to what degree what they had, but there was something that they were using.
Okay, so so I understand it. As I understand it, we've asked you to make a final report or that will indicate in layman's terms how the need in FY 23 or 24 or 25 for an interfund loan to occur, which has not been needed in years past. what were the circumstances that led up to that particular occurrence?
I couldn't answer that question right now.
And I guess my question is, do you think you'll be able to address that kind of a question when you conclude your report?
I sure hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you for preparing the reports. I just had a question. As you have reconciled now all of 2024 accounts, has there been any questionable charges that would raise a red flag, whether it's malfeasance or misappropriation of funds that have caught your eye?
So far, I haven't seen anything. So far, the auditors haven't seen anything. Have there been things that have been miscoded to different accounts? Yes. Is there any cash missing? Not that we know of right now, but the auditors will tell you they're not hired to find fraud or stuff like that. If it comes up, they find it. So right now, there's no cash that they can't account for. But like I said, there are things that are coded to the wrong place. So there was an enormous amount of cleanup before they even got here, and since they've been here, they still have found some things internally that have been coded incorrectly, and those are being corrected.
And do you have an estimated time schedule on when 2025 would be reconciled? The bank statements and
Well, we're up to
investment
May
accounts?
right now.
Okay.
So we have June, and then what we call 13th period, which is
Yep.
your audit and stuff like that. So we thought we would be a bit through a little bit that more now, but with the auditors on site, it's taken up a lot of the staff time with them on site.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions?
Just wondering to Superintendent Degner, what is the timeframe look of the on-ramp of Pat and then off-ramp?
Yeah, thanks, Director Lingo. We have Pat's first scheduled day to be March 13th. We anticipate she'll do orientation here, or sorry, excuse me, March, yeah, May 13th. She'll do orientation on the 28th of April, has some days probably that she's going to visit ahead of the 13th of May too, but she's expressed the desire to hit the ground running there on May 13th. And so we'll work with our interim CFO here about a transition plan through that process as well. And then one other item I wanted to note that's probably the most relevant for this piece of the agenda, we did get a note from the SBRC today that our hearing has been moved from what was the 24th of April till June 9th. And so they pushed it way back. I think actually what they have in front of them is some of the things maybe with the significant legislative changes that are being proposed related to property tax, related to the decreased levies, and then also the UAB restrictions that they're talking about. And then obviously we know and have been in tune to some of the special ed deficit concerns throughout the state. So I don't know if that's the reason they didn't share that, but it's just a hypothesis on that. But our hearing has been moved to June 9th. So we'll likely also want to update some exhibits and provide those as more accurate information. They said we could let them know when we had some new approvals to use. So want to make sure we provide the most relevant, timely data we have there, and any kind of other positive efforts we can show as we've worked through this. So that was a long way around your question, Director Lingo, but
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. The next item is the board financial leadership update. It was discussed briefly at the Financial Oversight Committee. Wanted to see if directors had additional comments, questions here.
I would just like to note that personally, I found this update very helpful, but I also would suspect that I think, as Jennifer suggested from time to time, that most people would not find it particularly understandable. And if we could spend a little bit of effort in trying to make it more understandable, that might help us in communicating to the community.
And thank you. And just to expand on that a little bit, I think we've heard some community comment tonight about opportunities, let's say, for improving communication. And I just want to be clear that that's under discussion, and we're looking at different ways that we can, as a board, communicate some of the main actions underway with the community a little more easily and clearly.
I want to address some of the community commenters tonight because I think this is appropriate time to address that. So the question about the audit, the intention there is to then seek the state auditor after we have completed the FY24 audit. Right now, there is actually nothing to audit until we are done with that audit. And a few meetings back, I asked our interim CFO if she felt that the FY23 audit needed to be audited by the state auditor, and the answer was no. So that's what we're waiting for, and that's why we passed that resolution. As soon as we are done with the FY24 audit, we will then reach out to the state auditor.
And Director French, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Director Lingo, you personally spoke with the auditor's office, correct?
Well, spoke to the auditor's chief of staff.
Correct.
I talked to the auditor last week, but that was different.
But and what Director French just relayed is what the auditor's office relayed to you.
Yes.
And so I think it is fair to say that at least one board member has personally has been in contact with the auditor.
One of the things that they told me is that we already had Bonsack and Frommel, and to change mid-game would take a significant amount more time, and John relayed to me that, or Mr. McCormley relayed to me that we should go ahead with them, and this is the path forward.
What we've done so far.
Yes, what we've done. He wrote the language. Well, he gave us some language. You asked for it to be stronger. Director Williams and some other board members asked for it to be stronger language, so then I brought it back to him, and then he gave us stronger language.
And President Malone was on the email to the auditor. Okay. To the organizational audit and the plans to, and the suggestion to reduce the administrator budget by $1 million and to bring in experts to evaluate that. That is something that I think we should seriously consider doing.
Director Finch, I just want to add, I've been making some inquiries about firms that could support us in that effort, because that's a pretty specialized task, and
Great.
Got inquiries out, no answers yet.
Okay, wonderful. And so that relates, to the organizational chart, to reorganize and right-size our cabinet, which now has a budget line item of about $3.8 million. The year-round staff total is over $13 million, which is 6% of our general fund. We need to focus on reducing our spending. We have 86% of our general fund going to salaries and benefits, and that's far surpasses what the recommended percentage is, which is closer to about 80%, certainly lower than 85%. So we need to focus on reducing the percentage of our general fund budget that's spent on salaries and benefits. I think we need to give serious consideration to selling this building. I don't think we should have bought it. Right now, the time is right with the development that's going on. If people want to know where their natatorium is and where their turf field is, it's in this building. It does not align with what our priorities should be in terms of focusing on providing for the schools. And I regret that that I ended up voting to buy this building. I went into that meeting very critical of the purchase, planning to vote no, and somehow I ended up voting yes. And it's been the one regret, not the one regret, but it's the biggest regret that I have of my tenure. So I think we need to look at selling this building. This community needs us to try to rebuild trust. And I brought it up in the financial oversight meeting tonight. The recommendation that we look at ways for our teachers and all of our staff to be able to give feedback. We need some type of an anonymous feedback system. We also need a whistleblower hotline, in my opinion. When we talk about the root causes of what is happening here, and again, I said it last time, this board financial leadership document, we're just talking about putting out fires. We're not really addressing the root causes. Some of the root causes would be some of our deficient hiring practices. Another root cause would be, in my opinion, but I say this because I'm hearing it from many, many teachers and staff, and I imagine that the rest of you are hearing it as well, that they are afraid to speak up. We heard it tonight at community comment. They are fearful of retaliation, and morale is incredibly low. Anybody who knows anything about management, psychology, and people know that when people feel unheard, they feel unsafe. And we need our staff to be able to raise concerns and without fear of retaliation. I'm hearing stories of staff, not hearing stories, I'm seeing staff create burner email accounts in order to get information to the board because they are afraid of what would happen if they weren't anonymous. They are using third parties to get information to the board. And when employees don't feel safe to speak up, issues are not surfaced early, risks escalate, and problems become a crisis. This affects everything from our finances to recruitment and retention to classroom safety. So, and our board oversight depends upon trusted, transparent channels of communication, not just for things like $10 million loans or the condition of our SAVE funds. Without safe, reliable reporting channels, our board is limited in its ability to provide oversight and prevent failures. So I think this is a priority. I brought it up at agenda setting at the last regular meeting. I brought it up at agenda setting at the regular meeting prior to that. I don't see anything tonight or in agenda setting for the next meeting, but this is something that needs to be prioritized. We need to implement a truly anonymous feedback channel for staff, establish a whistleblower system, and we should also consider whether our ombuds should be reporting directly to the board. These steps are foundational to rebuilding trust, improving morale, and preventing future crisis. And it ultimately will impact our hiring and our retention, as well as our enrollment and school choice. So we cannot resolve this current situation without addressing the conditions that allowed it to happen. And I think that that situation right there is one of the conditions that allowed it to happen. Lastly, I was really pleased to hear our union president, Brady Shutt, talk about how he was at the car line this week. I think that's wonderful. Where is Brady? Is he still here? Thanks, Brady. And that's one of the ways where I feel like central administration can interface more with the buildings and our teachers and our parents. I would encourage us to seek out even stronger strategies for connection between central administration and the daily instructional reality. I would like to see regular direct observations, perhaps monthly, by everyone on the executive team. Structured, recurring presence to improve understanding and decision-making and ensure leadership remains closely connected to the realities of the classroom. we want better decisions for all. We all need to stay close to the work so that we can be proactive rather than reactive. And if we want to build trust, we need systems that ensure people feel safe speaking up and systems that ensure the board is informed in a timely and transparent manner. That was a lot. Sorry about that.
No, thank you.
Yep.
All good points.
Thanks.
One of the things I'd like added to the leadership thing, or the leadership document, is the observations and considerations of, that PFM gave us last week. I think it's to be transparent with the community of where we're at, where we're gonna be working with 2% general fund increases for payroll and benefits. Was mentioned already that we don't have a probably won't have a Moody's rating until fiscal year 20, or sometime in 2028. I don't know if it's fiscal year. The $1.5 million in PEPL. And this fits into, well, I'm gonna go to just having that information out there for the public, to be transparent of where we're at. And this next one's gonna go to stage 3. The board will engage in a multi-stage approach. Stage 3, elementary attendance center capacity review and class size study for long-term fiscal sustainability. So our elementary model, right? Tonight on the 5 p.m. news, KCRG ran a presentation titled Coralville Shows Renderings of Multi-million-dollar Recreation Facility. In it, they highlighted ICCSD will be giving $14 million to Coralville. Let that set in for a minute. The city of Coralville still believes that we have $14 million. Look at the data. Are we going to borrow from PEPL once it is available? I don't know. But we need to recognize that we have limited funds. When I look at this audience, I know you recognize that we have limited funds. 3 weeks ago, I thought it was just restricted to the general fund and or cash flow. Now, like you, I realize that we're cash strapped when it comes to building any kind of buildings. We must prioritize construction and projects in a way that prioritizes a healthy general fund. This does not mean that I do not care about any specific building. I care just about as much as the field turf at the Longfellow Playground that's a little ripped right now that my children play on a daily basis, as much as I do for the baseball, softball fields at West High School, or the turf that is going to be needed at Liberty High School in the next year or two. All this matters to me as much as it does you do, but we are in an unprecedented financial crisis for the school district. Others may disagree with me at this board, but that's my feeling. No matter what you may hear or have heard, our experts have told us that we do not have the capital to spend. This cannot be smoothed over. No bond rating until 2028, no save until 2039, 38, 39, and PEPL for only routine maintenance until 2039. Routine maintenance. Making sure our classrooms are the best for the children that they can be. We need to be more responsible in our money. I highlighted this when I spoke to the board about my no vote in FMP 2.3, but being responsible is hard and not as fun. We did this wrong. We did this wrong when we came up with FMP 2.3 without advice from bond council, and we did not solicit advice from experts in the re-envisioning plan. That did not fall well in the community. We don't have the right way yet. And if the classroom experience of our students in the general fund are our type priorities, we should hire people that are responsible to move forward with the district's reconfiguration. You have to recognize that if we are serious about reconfiguring the elementary model, there will be building reconfigurations that will probably need to be done, and we need to ensure that we have the capital to do this. And that is to ensure whether it's new classrooms, portables, whatever it needs to be made. Any changes to our buildings or attendance patterns need to be made with expertise, not my own wishful thinking. This is a responsibility to me. Finding some sort of outside group, as was highlighted at a previous meeting, is the thing that we need to do. And we need to be more responsible with our spending when it comes to our facilities to make sure that we have the money for our elementary buildings or whatever building improvements that we need in the future. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing? I forgot. I mentioned this at the financial oversight meeting, and I forgot to mention it here at the board table. The idea of having regular recurring agenda items for progress monitoring of any corrective action plans.
President Malone, I would like to just say that I do definitely agree that improving or establishing the ability of staff to bring their concerns directly to the board freely and without hesitation is an important thing, and I'm more than happy to support and work with other board members to get that done as best we can. I do want to note that I have had conversations with members of the community, especially members of the black community, who do not share who do not share the notion that somehow or another the district has moved into some state that is going to be impossible or very difficult to recover from. Their approach is more nuanced than that, and I think that from what I understand from their comments, and I revisited the comments made by 3 members of the Black Voices Project to us at our meeting in February 24th. The notion that they bring, I think, it really informs my considerations, are that this district, as all districts, goes through periods of time where things are difficult, but if we stick together and focus on our fundamental mission, which is education, we will be able to recover and to go forward. How we go about prioritizing our capital projects is certainly a question now, but I don't think we have a full understanding yet from the consultants about what our capabilities actually are, or what our prospects actually are. And I'm looking forward to understanding that more thoroughly. I do believe that we should continue to avoid giving the impression of, or the picture of assigning blame to the staff members for particular steps that we're analyzing and trying to review and grasp now. I think that, frankly, that the notion that we are in a crisis is not an accurate description of where we are financially in reality. I think we have difficulties and problems. I don't think it's a crisis. And I think there are many people in the community that don't think it's a crisis also.
I will echo the one thing that I think we really need to figure out a way to address that Director Finch brought up is a way for staff to communicate with board members more freely, anonymously, just because in the last month, staff members that I've been meeting with, talking with, there is a concern for retaliation, and even going through third parties to convince them to talk with me where I will not put their positions in danger. It's been heartbreaking just to hear some of the experiences. So that would be ideal to have that. And they see this as being a multi-level crisis, not just financially. There's other pieces that I think they feel has not been addressed for years. So this has been like the hardest tenure of serving on the board, where I think it's chickens have come home to roost. It's bad, in my opinion. So trying to work together to solve that is my immediate concern. Were there any additional comments or questions?
Thank you, Ruthina.
Next up is the action item, and as agreed, we were going to seek a motion to table that.
Motion to table the 700 series.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, we're ready to vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is legislative, updates. I cannot get to, okay. Our next legislative forum is Friday, April 24th. It will be in the boardroom from 4 to 5. And Superintendent Degner, I know you alluded to some changes that have come through. I'm sorry, the microphone isn't down.
That's okay.
So feel free to go ahead.
So there, and I'll admit I did not get an update today on these items, or probably as of midday yesterday. But there's a few things that have improved as they've traveled through. Still, folks may view aspects of them as problematic. I think one of the bills we were concerned about from a financial perspective, the Make America Healthy Again bill, they've reduced, or they've taken out the PE requirement, and so that would have cost us the equivalent of 10 FTE teachers and $1 million if we would have had to honor that, and so that portion has been removed. There's still some nice things in there about screen time limitation, which I think fits with our conversation this evening. And so that would be one to continue to pay attention to. Student behavior bill continues to get bipartisan support in the legislature. There's some different aspects where they're trying to clean up, I think, some of what happens with special education, students removed from the classroom, their reentry into the room, teachers' abilities in that situation. So that continues to be part of that bill that gets worked on as well. And I just lost my place on the last one. Oh, and then the property tax reform bills that continue to go back and forth or move through. Impact points for us, similar to, I think, points you guys were starting to address there is, what additional capacity or lack thereof will be there for any facility projects for the district, knowing that levy rates can also be changed in regards to PEPL. They're tinkering with the levy rates, and then you guys have heard us talk somewhat before about even save revenues and reducing the district's portion of those save revenues. So as the state's budget is out of whack, then they're trying to hold more resources from us, and with our situation, obviously that makes everything more difficult as well in terms of any changes that'll get made in that regard. So those are a few of the items I just wanted to draw out for your attention in terms of legislative update. Like President Malone said, we will have our next legislative forum on Friday, April 24th. That'll be our last one of the session. I think that's all I really wanted to draw out for you on that one. Is there any questions for me on those? I'm sure I missed something significant. So when I try to push those updates through to you guys, those from the UEN are worth looking through, or even watching the video is informative.
Okay, any questions about the director liaison report?
I promised I did stuff in the community.
Okay.
I just did not submit it. But probably the most fun one is just the school carnival circuit is going on right now. So if you have little ones or get a chance to go to a carnival, I highly suggest it. They're always looking for volunteers. So, but this week was Longfellow. I'm going to try to make a few this weekend. But the nose picking one always seems weird, but you know what? The kids like it, so have fun.
I guess that's a new one since my kids were little, but.
They reach up a nose and they pick out a toy or a piece of candy.
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry,
I just want to note that I was able to participate on the review panels for the foundation of the school district foundation's Big Idea Hunt grant review. And it's really great to do that because you just see all these really fine ideas that are coming from the teaching staff that need and are utilized very well for the benefit of students. The funds made it available for this program by the school district's foundation.
Thank you. Anything else?
That was fun to review those.
Yeah.
To Director Finch's comment earlier about being in the thick of things, I had the opportunity to help with one day of the Dream Accelerator for a group of West High ninth graders. And so I got to see how that whole process worked. I'm excited to hear that there are plans for extending that to other grades to make more use of that space. But it was fun to see the ideas the students had. And then I also had an opportunity to learn about just some of the people who were there with the students, like the building substitute who was there, and learned about just how valuable that role can be. And so it was a good opportunity.
Thank you. If there's not anything else, we'll move on to agenda setting. So we have a special meeting of the Board of Directors on the anticipatory warrants. That will be on the 23rd, sorry. And that can be on Zoom. We did get that confirmed.
I think it's a matter of setting a time, and I believe Suzanne said she could be available between 12 and 5 that day. So as a board, we just need to figure out, and it should be really quick, what time frame works best for folks in respects that I know folks work. But hopefully having it electronically would help with that schedule.
That was, so we can appear by Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That helps.
So would board members be available like at 4:30?
Yes.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. It's,
All right.
what day is
4:30.
that on again, the 23rd?
Yes, the 23rd.
It's a Thursday.
And shall we just plan for Zoom? No other setup? Okay,
Because of schedules, I think that will probably work best.
got it.
And then, do you have something?
Well, before we go to the 28th, so are we not doing an education meeting on the 21st?
That's what I want to talk about. That we had kind of paused those because we were saving time if needed for special sessions and so on. I do think that it's really important to get those going regularly. I also really want to evaluate the charter and do a similar process with that charter as we have been doing with the financial oversight. I feel like that committee is not living up to its potential right now. And I think that we can do some things to help with some of the other processes going on through that committee. And so I am actually not certain what the best process is for that. Do we meet on that day to discuss the charter and maybe see if there's other items that we want to add to that agenda, maybe related to the survey about screens
I
and
like
so on?
that plan.
So just
mean-
turn it into a work session?
Well, we could still call it education committee meeting and talk about the charter
And
and,
the-
planning out.
Yeah, and see, and yeah, what topics we would like to focus on there, how we think, get input on how it could be useful to staff and.
And for those, do we usually, I mean, if we do it here, is it 4:30, 5 o'clock? What works best with people work schedules? 4:30?
4:30, yeah.
Sounds good, okay. There we go. Thank you, Director Williams and Horn Frazier, for catching that. Okay, that takes us to policy and governance on the 28th. It's the 800 policies, building sites, as well as the 700s.
The regular schedule would be for the 800s, but we did put the 700s. So,
Right.
Director Lingo, do you think we'll get through both, or do we need to? I'm seeing some shaking heads.
I would suggest starting at 5 if
Yeah,
possible.
I go 5 o'clock
Okay.
on it.
Yeah, because I wanted to add
The 303.
303.2 and 303.4, as well as policy 207.
Yeah, you definitely have to start at.
And we have the fringe benefit one to go back to as well.
That's the-
Oh, it's on there, okay. Sorry. I didn't open that one.
Then after that, we would have our regular board meeting with standing items, as well as certified budget and tax certification. And is that tax certification, but will that be a presentation as well?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so it'll be a presentation and an action item.
Correct.
Sorry, just making notes. And what?
Okay, at what point will we be talking about prioritizing capital projects? If not next meeting, I guess I just want to make sure that that's in, top of mind for everyone.
Degner, would that be something that you all could be prepared to talk about on the 28th, or would it need to wait till May 1st, or the first meeting in May?
I believe we'll know more Thursday. We'll have a check-in with PFM at that time, and so I think if there was something substantive to present on the 28th, we could do that. I'm guessing Suzanne will share some information around, first step would be once we can articulate some capacity to you or lack thereof capacity, what are priorities before we would build something. So if you're okay kind of having a question mark on that one of the 28th, or what would it be, the 12th of May for the next time. But I think as soon as we know some of those chunks and big rocks, we should come back and have that conversation.
Okay, and then, of course, what we talked about with the employee feedback system, whistleblower hotline, et cetera, and then the action item on the closed session.
We've been working on the tool, Director Finch.
Okay.
That's something I didn't find an opportunity to share earlier, but the ombuds, Brady and Kristen, have been working on a tool for the anonymous reporting tool, so that's something we could bring back and highlight too about what that looks like and get your feedback on if that's the right direction to go.
Okay.
All right. As well as the closed session, anything else from directors?
I have a question. One of the things we've been talking about is finding other ways for the board to communicate with the community, and I'm not sure what the best forum is for discussing that. And there may be some things that come out of the education committee meeting, but I don't know where the best place for that discussion to happen is.
That could be on our agenda item if board members are okay with that. Yep.
Yeah, if the staff, can,
That Charlie.
if the staff can join in and to give us some ideas, and their ideas, yeah.
Anything else from directors? All right, hearing none, just a reminder, we do have closed sessions after this, but is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.